With Donald Trump back in the White House, the global chessboard is shifting once again. For Kazakhstan, a strategically located and resource-rich nation, this moment presents a rare window of opportunity. Despite more than 30 years of diplomatic ties, no U.S. president has ever visited the country. So, could President Trump be the first? And how might US-Kazakhstan relations deepen under his second term? To explore the possibilities and the politics, I'm joined by Daniel Runde, Senior Vice President at the Center of Strategic and International Studies. Hi, Daniel.
Hi,
it's
Aida.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How do you like Astana International Forum
I like
so
it a
far?
lot. It's great. It's my third time at the Astana International Forum. It gets better every time.
You know, today's topics were so varied, but one of them, I think, was multilateralism and whether we should pull the plug or resuscitate it. What do you think?
I'm an optimist on multilateralism. I believe that we're in the process of renegotiating the basic agreements around multilateralism. President Trump doesn't want to leave most of the multilateral institutions. There's 130 multilateral institutions. He's strengthening NATO. He's staying in the World Bank. He's staying in the IMF. He's probably staying in the regional development banks like the EBRD and the Asian Development Bank, institutions that matter for Kazakhstan and Central Asia. I'm overall optimistic. I think the trade disruptions that are happening may be the only way to get significant change over time, whether it's in the trade realm or maybe in some other realms. So I think the American people are willing to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt on trade and a little bit of uncertainty and maybe a little bit of front-end pain for some progress, but also because many voters believe President Trump is delivering on things like immigration, inflation, and on dealing with political correctness, three things that the American voters voted for when they voted for President Trump in November.
What do you think about Kazakhstan as a player in this game of bringing back multilateralism? Because Kazakhstan is betting big on it. I think it won from it because of its multi-vector policy. So what do you think?
So I think Kazakhstan's a great development success story. I think Astana is an impressive city. I think that Kazakhstan has an important role to play, whether it's in minerals or energy or agriculture. But I also think that Kazakhstan has relationships all over the world and has convening power. An example of this is the Astana International Forum. I think Kazakhstan has made significant investments in multilateral fora, the United Nations, the OSCE, the regional development banks, the World Bank, the IMF. So I think that Kazakhstan is an important net contributor to the world. And I think that the world's going to look to Kazakhstan to contribute yet even more.
It's a pleasure to have you as a guest on our YouTube channel. And the plenary session, President talked a lot about Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan's role, Kazakhstan's vision for the world and for the country in general. What do you think, can countries like Kazakhstan can contribute to rebuilding trust in global cooperation, which is deteriorating at the moment, or the world is just destined to be divided into blocks and rivalries?
So I think Kazakhstan is a great development success story. In 1991, I think the GNP per capita of Kazakhstan was something like $700 per person. It's now something like $15,000 per person. I've been to Astana several times since 2017 or 2016, and every time I come, I'm amazed by the progress that's here. This is a city that grew up basically out of nothing 25 years ago. So Kazakhstan is got a lot of potential and works hard at trying to have relationships with everybody. And for the most part, I think most of Kazakhstan's partners, all of Kazakhstan partners, largely accept that because you're not a security threat to anybody. And so as a result, it works. I think that President Trump is looking to renegotiate burden sharing across a number of different fronts. In the security realm, he would like all the countries in Europe to spend a lot more on defense, and they have been woefully not spending enough money on defense for 60 years. I could pull quotes from Eisenhower, Lyndon Johnson, John F. Kennedy, complaining about the Europeans not spending enough on defense. The only time they've started spending more on defense is only when Donald Trump in his first term threatened to pull out. So sometimes disruption can create positive change. And so I think President Trump is a disruptor. And I think that in the case of NATO, I think NATO's going to come out of this stronger as a result. Then we have 2 new members. Everyone's going to spend a lot more money on defense in Europe. So multilaterally, we're going to stay, and it's stronger. If I think about, there's like about 130 multilateral institutions, so that we, the United States, are members of. The IMF and the World Bank. Secretary Bessent gave a speech saying the IMF should stick to its original mission and the World Bank should stick to its original mission. So that may require some changes. Perhaps there have been some decisions about strategic decisions by both institutions that need to be kind of reeled in. But I think we're going to stay in those institutions. I have a hard time believing we're going to leave the Asian Development Bank. I have a hard time believing we're going to leave the Inter-American Development Bank. I have a hard time believing we're going to leave the EBRD, which is an institution well known to your listeners here in Kazakhstan. I don't see us doing that. At the same time, we are thinking about, so it's true that in the trade realm, I just came from a panel on trade as a weapon. My point in the panel was that trade has been used as a weapon for other things for decades and decades. We used Jackson-Vanik, something your listeners know exactly what it is. Most people in Washington don't know what Jackson-Vanik is.
But it still is applied to Kazakhstan.
Yeah, Jackson-Vanik was a tool, a trade tool, trade as a weapon, to force the then Soviet Union to allow for Jews and other religious dissidents to leave the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union ended, and that worked. In the 70s and 80s, the Soviet Union agreed because of pressure, because of Jackson-Vanik, to allow more than 1 million people to leave for the United States and Israel. That's a good thing. That was a great thing. The Soviet Union ended 35 years ago. Jackson-Vanik was removed on Russia more than 10 years ago. So we've kept it on Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan as a weapon by a small number of human rights activists to put pressure on Kazakhstan. I think it's way anachronistic and way past its time. And so as a result, I think that we should fix this. There's been a lot of concern about President Trump using tariffs
as a weapon.
As a weapon. Well, if I think about China, China is selling drugs, or the ingredients that are creating drugs to kill Americans in rural America by the tens of thousands, and the Chinese haven't done anything about it. So my view is, I'm happy, at least for now. I think the American people, he has a 53% approval rating, according to Rasmussen reports. More than 50% of the American people think that the country's going in the right direction. It's the first time in more than 20 years, and probably 25 years since 9/11, that the American people have thought the country's going in the right direction the first time in 25 years. Trade is not what people elected him for, but if he wants to move in this direction that creates some unpredictability and some disruption, the American voter and the American people are going to give him the benefit of that doubt for now.
So when you talk about American people, Trump administration, I wonder how it's going to affect the relations between the United States and Kazakhstan, because it has been a great, I think, thesis used by previous administration that they were expanding cooperation with 5 Central Asian countries. It was the first time when Central Asian countries' presidents met with Joe Biden in Washington.
That was a great thing.
Yes, I wonder how it's going to change, whether it's going to change at all, or it's going to stay the same.
I think Central Asia is a really important part of the world. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan are important countries. The problem is, sitting in Washington, they're really far away. It's really hard to get here. But you all are going to be solutions providers to a lot of the world's challenges, whether it's gas, oil, minerals, transit points, maybe digital. So maybe fertilizer, maybe more agriculture. So you all have a lot to contribute to the world. So whether it's been Republican presidents or Democratic presidents, that's been recognized for more than 30 years. There's been an understanding across administrations that Central Asia is important. Now, we have so many other problems and crises in the world as the United States that Central Asia has to compete to get any attention. There's never been a visit by an American president to Central Asia. If you ask me who would be the most likely president to visit in the last 30 years and in the next 30 years, it's going to be Donald Trump's second term. And the reason for that is, I think if Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan were to put together a package, a real economic proposal with a big number attached to it, the way you just saw in the Middle East, he would come here.
Can you explain to me why Jackson-Vanik still applied to Kazakhstan and it was lifted off Russia?
We should have fixed it. When they fixed Russia, they should have fixed it. And it was because there was no organized push to, there have been increasing attempts at this over the last several Congresses and presidents. This Congress, we have a Republican House and a Republican Senate, we should be able to do this. But I do think it's going to require significant political organization. I also think there are things that Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, I think Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan should be working together on this, maybe several other countries like Azerbaijan. There ought to be a coalition of countries that come together, and the businesses that benefit from trade or future trade with these countries. I think it's an anachronism. It's lamentable that it continues. I'm embarrassed as an American that we continue to have this. We should not have this. So I know this is a sore point in our relationship, and I think we can be honest with each other and we can say we need certain things, but I think this should be we have a problem in our political process. It's a function of the dysfunction in our political process, not a function of there's somebody sitting at the White House saying we got to keep this on them. No, there's no central planning mind that's saying, oh, it's just that. The other problem is in our political process, and you lived in the United States, we have different committees. So the committees that think about foreign policy or national security are different than the committee that does Jackson-Vanik, which does trade and taxes.
Yes.
And so the kinds of levers that diplomats would pull or the relations that we have are not the right relationships on the Hill, on Capitol Hill, for this issue.
That just says that, it tells a lot about that there's no super perfect political system anywhere in the world.
I think democracy is the best system compared to all the others. It's very imperfect. Our democracy is imperfect. I'll be the first to say that. I believe that the arc of progress bends towards democracy. I want to say something about that. Your government has a policy of joining the OECD, right? The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. The OECD is the club of market democracies. So when I hear your president and when I read your planning statements of your government saying you want to join the OECD, I say 2 thumbs up. Yes, I want Kazakhstan to join over the next 10 years the club of market democracies. When I hear your president today talk about democracy, he talked about democracy. Yes. Your president is slated to step down in 2029, right? He has a 7-year term. He was elected in 2022.
Yes.
I believe him. And so I think that your country is on a path of political reform. And so your president's taking some risks. I think we should support him. I think we ought to find ways to be supportive of that. And so this is an important country. We overlook it because it's so far away, and we think you guys are best friends with Russia, and you're sandwiched between Russia and China, and you have a complicated neighborhood. But we could be a better friend to Kazakhstan. And I think you guys would like more of us. Maybe not more of everything, but you'd like more of us. And so we need to figure out ways. I mean, the reason I came here is half of life is showing up.
I heard another point of view about about relationships between US and Kazakhstan and maybe other Central Asian countries, is that especially during Trump administration, many experts think that his approach will be more beneficial both to the US and Kazakhstan, because he will recognize the fact that Kazakhstan cannot move out of this neighborhood. This is where we have been living for centuries. We've been dealing with China and Russia for centuries. These two countries will be our partners, trading partners, because geographically we're located here. And if the United States is not going to demand us breaking up with those two partners, the conversation will be different.
It's going to de-emphasize the climate agenda. I think you've seen this. So Kazakhstan has a lot of oil to offer the world. I think President Trump would like to see Kazakhstan produce yet more oil, because that'll reduce the price of gas for the American worker and the American citizen at the pump. And reduced oil prices mean cheaper food. So on the one hand, you'll see that. I also think that, Kazakhstan is a country that is religiously very tolerant. And so for President Trump's human rights agenda is going to be focused on things like religious freedom. Kazakhstan is a world leader in religious freedom. So on, let me call it, a human rights agenda front, and on an energy climate front, President Trump is going to be a very friendly president, have a benign approach to Kazakhstan in those ways. I think the question for Kazakhstan is let's make a deal. And what I mean by that is, if Kazakhstan wants more of us, the onus is a little bit on Kazakhstan. You guys have to decide. If you want more of us, I think you guys have to kind of work together with Uzbekistan and put together an offer. Like, we've never had an American president come to Kazakhstan or Central Asia.
And I think to Uzbekistan either. Yeah.
No, because it's so darn far away. My point is, think about, this is probably the best opportunity for a U.S. president to visit Central Asia in the last 30 years and in the next 30 years. So the opportunity, I think Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan should work together, put together an offer, and make it so attractive that President Trump wants to come here to sign some agreements.
Okay.
He's not going to come and lecture about climate change, and he's not going to come here and talk about topics that are necessarily uncomfortable for Kazakhstan.
I wanted to move on to questions more more broad.
Sure.
Kazakhstan is a country that can become at risk of getting into a middle income trap.
Yeah.
That has been said a lot by different international institutions.
Your government's very aware of this.
Yes, and when we have such a slow global growth in general, Kazakhstan is experiencing relatively high growth in general, but in the world, we depend a lot on the world, our economy. So like our president said today, we cannot solve our problems while being in isolation.
No.
This requires, a multilateral approach.
So I think it's been clear since your independence that you've taken a multilateral and interdependent, you've tried to have good relations with Russia. You've improved your relations with China. You've improved your relations with Uzbekistan by a lot. You've sought deeper ties and sustained ongoing ties with the United States.
And Europe.
And
also.
Europe. I think Prime Minister Maloney is coming tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow.
So Prime Minister, I think Italy is your third largest trading partner. Italy is a uniquely important trading partner for Kazakhstan. So I think if you have an economy that's only dependent on commodities, that's a risk. Now, I think your government and your leaders for decades have been concerned about this. You have a sovereign wealth fund. You've invested in people. You have the Bolashak program that sends people abroad. You have a series of university partnerships, a growing number of them. I think the challenge for Kazakhstan is to move up the value chain away from commodities. You need to have a knowledge economy and a service economy and an innovation economy. Having more political freedom, I think that's what your president was talking about, will encourage. I mean, I like Astana. I like Almaty. The food's good, infrastructure's great, everything, the Wi-Fi works, everything works. The water's clean, services are good, airports are awesome. So I like coming here. It's just, I just need a direct flight. We need a direct flight. I just think that you all have a lot going for you, but it requires further movement towards other economic activities. I'm all for oil. I'm all for agriculture, and I'm all for minerals. But I think it's like how you move up the value chain and how you diversify your economy away from commodities is going to be a critical part of you escaping the middle income trap.
By the way, you mentioned critical minerals. There's another point of view that Kazakhstan can become an alternative for the United States.
But I think Kazakhstan has all the minerals. If you use cheap energy from Turkmenistan to process minerals here, you have manufacturing know-how, you have a lot of tech know-how, you have a lot of engineers, you have a lot of capable people. And arguably your greatest resource are your people. It's not your oil, it's not your minerals, it's not your location, which is both a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
It's a blessing in many ways.
But we can turn that
you can
curse
turn into a plus, the middle corridor. You want to move those minerals down the middle corridor. Not through Iran. We don't like Iran. Not through Afghanistan. We don't like Afghanistan. Not through China. Not through the northern corridor. The middle corridor, the Trans-Caspian corridor. And we ought to be a better partner to you in helping make that happen.
When J.D. Vance, vice president, was at the Munich Security Conference, he highlighted AI as a potential area where the European Union, the United States can partner. What about Kazakhstan and US? Because Kazakhstan bets very big on AI at the moment.
You need a lot of data. You need a lot of energy. You need a lot of copper cables.
Again, critical minerals.
Yeah, you need a cold weather to keep those data farms cool.
Which we have.
You got cold weather.
Yes.
If you just check it out in the morning, step out in the morning, it's cool here, right? It's the coldest capital in the world is Astana. So, yeah, I would think you all could play a big role. I think that ought to be part of the let's make a deal conversation.
But in general, what do you think about AI? Like, do you see the promise?
Look, I can hardly use ChatGPT. I can hardly use my iPhone. So I'm not the most technologically savvy person, but my kids use it and it's clearly coming. So I'm going to learn from my children about AI, but I just know that I'm a technology immigrant, not a technology native. But I would just say it's coming and we have to, it's just going to happen. And so I think this is an important part of the future.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.